Patrick, who Najaf will introduce with some of his bio, is somebody I've known for quite a while. He is a rock star in a whole bunch of things, so I feel very inadequate compared to you, Patrick, so here's to you. Patrick's done a lot of things that together don't exist usually in one person in terms of experience and accomplishment. So I think you'll find what he has to say interesting, and all that experience, which is, it's very diverse and it's extreme, I guess is a good way to put it to some of it. Some of it's entrepreneurial, so that gives him a unique perspective. And I think he's come up with an interesting way to talk about sort of fear that we all have, right, in some way, shape, or form, and turning it into something else. So I'll let Najaf give an intro. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Steve. So over to our special guest today. So today we're going to explore the topic of creating a culture of courage, and together we will learn how using fear as a fuel can be a competitive advantage. From a second-place finish in the Olympic rowing trials to founding 3 tech companies, alongside earning 7 patents and raising over $50 million before exiting those companies, our next speaker has leveraged fear as a fuel for peak performance and to create a life of passion, happiness, and fulfillment. As you know, some fears you can face head-on, and some show up unexpectedly to shake you to your core. When our next speaker was told he had leukemia, he again faced fear head-on and learned one of the 3 life secrets. He took those lessons on fear and channeled them through into setting world records by being the first person to attempt cycling the 7 summits. This included hauling nearly 100 pounds of gear up to Europe's highest mountain and cycling down. When he realized the power of fear to fuel amazing feats in all aspects of life, he began interviewing the world's top neuroscientists and psychologists for his next book, and to find out why and how our mind can lead us to the life of our dreams. Please welcome the fear guru himself, an expert in creating a culture of courage, Mr. Patrick Sweeney.
Today, you're going to find fear like you've never found it before in your life. We're going to make you understand fear deep in your core. Because to create a culture of courage, you need to find more fear. The truth of the matter is, we don't find enough fear in our life. Every day goes by and we do something to avoid fear. So we're going to find more fear, we're going to feed it. And I'll tell you the neuroscience behind it. We all have something called a fear frontier. And the fear frontier is right where those 2 parabolas meet. So kind of along the dread line in this instance. You can use fear to make radically better decisions. Because there are only 2 ways in life to make decisions. Either out of fear or out of opportunity. When you make decisions out of fear, it always leads to regret. When you make decisions out of opportunity, it leads to growth. And understanding how you're making decisions is critical, especially in creating a culture of courage, like we're trying to do here at eBay. So the culture here is definitely not one of courage yet. I was speaking to a few of you over the past couple of months, and one of the things I found out is people aren't giving the right answers or the truthful answers on some of these HR surveys that go out. Okay, so I was going to ask everyone to raise their hand if they've ever given a non-truthful survey, but Steve's sitting in the back of the room, so we won't do that. So there are so many people here who have not given truthful answers. It led me to ask the next question, well, why not? And the answer was simple. Well, they say they're anonymous, but they can really track our IP address, and they know what it is. And I said, yeah, but why don't you want them to know the real answers? Why don't you want them to know what's bugging you? Well, we might get fired. Or I might not be able to do on the team. I might not get this promotion. Those are all fear-based decisions. And that's one thing that we're trying to change here. So it's fear is a movie we play in our mind. It's not real. Risk is something very different. Risk is statistics. Risk is analysis, actuarial tables. We know in our lifetime, in this room, 1.6 of us will die of a car crash. We also know it'd take a room like this filled up 20 times to find one person who dies in a plane crash. That's just risk. Those are statistics. It's almost like risk is at this end of the solar system at Mercury, and fear is way on the other end of the system coming out of Uranus. I know. You can't believe I talked for 10 minutes about neuroscience and put in a Uranus joke, can you? Well, my 10 and 12-year-old boys love me for that. Speaking of 10 and 12-year-old boys, one thing I found out when I started researching this neuroscience changed the way that I parent, changed the way that I interact with younger people especially. The amygdala is fully developed at birth. So you have a fight, flight, or freeze response as a little kid to save your life. The prefrontal cortex, which I consider the adult supervision for the amygdala, doesn't develop fully until you're in your mid-20s. So think about that from a parenting perspective. Whenever you get in a battle with your kid or a cousin or a brother or nephew or what have you, they're having an amygdala response. When you have an amygdala response, it sends a signal to your prefrontal cortex. And a great way to think of your prefrontal cortex is it's like a smartphone. It has access to all the applications in the world. Hundreds of thousands of applications. It has access to all the information you've ever had in your life. But you can only have one application up at a time, and that's called a working memory. So you've got this smartphone up here. You've got the amygdala down here. The amygdala is the thing that keeps you from jumping, makes you jump rather, when you walk out the door in the morning. The prefrontal cortex is the thing that says, whoa, 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 you don't have to run. Someone left the hose on the lawn. It's not a snake. So we get about 10% of our information from the conscious world. 90% of it is going into the amygdala, and we don't even see that it's going on, and we don't even recognize it. So some of you, Steve was talking about when he had an accident in the weight room, and he blacked out, and he saw that 300 pounds had been moved over to one place, and he didn't even know how. That's because his smartphone app was taken over by the amygdala that said, look, we got to get the hell out of here. And that's exactly what he did. So that prefrontal cortex, the reason we find our fear tells, those tells happen, that means your prefrontal cortex is getting taken over with a fight, flight, or freeze response. And it means you can't make a good decision because all you can do is react. So when you hit that fear frontier, when you go from uneasiness and you're sitting at your desk and your boss says, sends you an email and say, I want to talk to you, it's important. Then maybe it moves up to dread. And then when you walk in her door and all of a sudden she says, I can't believe this. All of a sudden you've moved to anguish and panic, and your amygdala is going to make the decisions for you. You're not going to make a good decision. So what we're going to do today is we're going to use 3 different methods to push that fear frontier out. We're going to move it over so that you can stay in control of making decisions in a high-stress environment, in a fearful environment, and even better than that, you can use that fear for superhuman powers.